Welcome to Religion 328, Family and Youth Ministry. By now you've taken many online courses. There's nothing left to challenge you concerning how to upload your discussion post or place an assignment into a Dropbox. But there are things to challenge you in this course, and it won't be the technology. What will challenge you in this course is the exciting area of youth and family ministry, an area that is so important and so critical for the church today. We will be spending quite a bit of time in our readings and in our posts and discussions talking about development issues for adolescents. But adolescents are not the only ones who go through development issues. So do the elderly, and so do the middle-aged. We're going to talk about the need for intergenerational communication and how important it is for the older generation to mentor the younger generation, and for the younger generation to gain from not only the experience of the older generation, but from the respect that the older generation can give to them. And that grants to them confidence and credibility. So the readings that you're going to have for this class involve three major textbooks. The first is Eutychus Youth, Applied Theology for Youth Ministry, one that I'm quite familiar with, as you can tell. Another reading that you'll be doing is Passing on the Faith by Hardell and Strawman, a model for youth and family ministry. That's a text that's going to supply you with example after example of how family and youth ministry can be conducted. And then there's Family Ministry Basics, a series of essays on specific topics of family and youth ministry. You're going to enjoy this course. There's a lot to talk about, and you'll find doing the postings and reading each other's suggestions very helpful. So let's move on and start talking about the assignments that you'll be having in this course. Some of the assignments that you're going to be having are those that you're very familiar with already. For example, there will be discussion posts, and your evaluation on those discussion posts, as usual, will consist not only of your initial post, but on your response to the posts of your peers. There will also be reading questions on the chapters that you read, on the essays that you're reading. And there are also several, essays that you're going to be reading that you'll find in PDF files in the learning management system. But one of the first assignments that you have, and I think one of the most interesting, is that of constructing a family genogram. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the genograms on the next slide. But this one, by the way, is something you're supposed to be doing right away. It's something for this initial week's work. And why is it important? Because it asks you to study your own family of origin, and as many generations of that family of origin as you can reconstruct. You'll be doing a history of your own family. I'll explain more as to why that's important in just a moment. There's two large assignments that you have, and these will be coming due at the end of the fifth week and at the end of the seventh week of the course. And the first of these is the Congregation Family Ministry Inventory. The directions for this inventory are again located in a document for you in the learning management system. Here is the assignment. You're to go to your congregation and learn as much as you can about what's happening in family and youth ministry in your congregation. You're also going to be asked to construct an age tree, which allows you to see where the largest bulk of individuals are along the life cycle in your congregation. You see, it's helpful to know that kind of information because it assists in planning, in understanding what the needs are within the congregation itself. You're going to find also that in this assignment you'll be asked to try and find what kinds of families are there in your congregation. And as you look at that, you'll notice that sometimes that can also direct the kinds of ministries that a congregation is going to have relative to family and youth. Once you've completed the Congregation Family Ministry Inventory, the second major assignment that you have is constructing a family ministry action plan based upon the data that you have gathered from the Congregation Family Ministry Inventory. You'll have a couple of weeks to work on it, but the idea is that now, having understood the situation of your congregation, you come to some idea of where family and youth ministry might go. What kinds of programs, activities, what are the things that you could initiate that would assist your congregation's family and youth ministry? That action plan will also be shared with your peers at the end of the course. What you see before you in this slide is a sample genogram. It's a genogram of 3 different generations. You have Carl, who's a merchant, who married Alice, a banker, and they had 3 sons and 1 daughter. Carl, a son who became a minister, Tom, who became a professor, and Dan, who also became a minister. The sister, Kathy, is a homemaker, and she married George, an oil trader, and they have 2 boys and a daughter. The oldest is Melissa, who's a homemaker, and Brian and David, who are both also homemakers. I wonder if that means that they're still at home. Depending upon when this was done, they seem to have been born in 81, 83, and 86. Well, let me talk a little bit more about this assignment. What we want to be able to do is help you construct at least a 3-generation picture of your family. Now, to do that, you use boxes for the males and circles for the females. You include occupations, you include birth order by where they fall, going from left to right along the line between the mother and the father. Their ages are included, generally their birth date or the age, if that's available. And then you see how things compare from one to another. Now, what's the point of doing this? Well, family history is a kind of a handy thing to have regardless. But the point is, we want you to be able to identify any patterns that follow from generation to generation. What kind of patterns? Well, occupations, for example, can be a pattern. In addition to that, certain kinds of behaviors, divorces following from one generation to another. It's interesting that in one of the leading books on how to do genograms or illustrating genograms, a book by the authors McGoldrick and McGoldrick, they looked at the families of famous people and also identified interesting patterns that went from generation to generation. This is very helpful because if there is some kind of a negative pattern, once it's identified, as counselors will tell us, something can be done about it. When it's unidentified, it tends to happen without intention. But now, once a pattern's been identified, people can become aware of it and respond to it in helpful ways. For example, if alcoholism seems to have followed from one generation to another, becoming aware of that difficulty and then doing something about it is a possibility. So in this assignment, we want you to analyze your own family of origin in order to note any repetitive patterns, notable events, great joys, sorrows that have influenced your family over 3 or 4 generations. And this genogram paper is due at the end of this first week through the Learning Management System Dropbox. This may cause you to ask a few questions or have things to share as well in the discussion posts. Don't hesitate to raise the questions or to share your insights as you find them. I think this can be a very fun exercise. Where do we go next in our course? Well, being a course in family and youth ministry, well, let's see what we can do to construct the perfect families. And of course, in doing so, we'll attempt to make ourselves the perfect parents, the perfect spouses, having the perfect children, and this is, of course, the goal of the church, isn't it? Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. No, it's not the way we look at things. In fact, we recognize from our study of Scripture in this first week that perfect families are not found, not here, not among us. In fact, the goal then of us as believers in Jesus Christ is coming to grips with how we are to respond and what we are to do with our own imperfections. What do we do because our families aren't perfect? How do we respond to the way in which sin iniquity and transgression raise their ugly heads within our own households. So we'll be looking at some examples from the Scriptures. Your readings this week will take you into the families of the patriarchs. You'll look at the family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then take a look at the family of King David. And as you already know, these are very troubled families. In fact, we could look at them as paradigms of dysfunction in one way or another. You know how Abraham lies about who his wife is, claiming her to be his sister. And of course, we know that's a half-truth based upon the fact that it was more like a cousin. Then there's the difficulty with Hagar and Ishmael. Certainly that was tremendously disruptive to the household of Abraham. And then we look at Isaac. Isaac and Rebekah. Is that a pleasant place to be? Doesn't seem to be, as they each pick their favorite. Isaac likes Esau, Rebekah likes Jacob, and suddenly by playing favorites, their home life becomes, well, a problem. We move on to Jacob, and let's just mention that Jacob is reason enough to realize that polygamy may not be a good thing. And then we move on to King David, and there we have the example of what happens when sin breaks in and destroys a household. Yet in each of these, if the goal was perfect families, then not even the patriarchs or King David would qualify. But we're not looking for perfect families, are we? We are looking for redeemed families. Families that know what to do when sin has entered. These are families that recognize the love of Jesus Christ that allows forgiveness to exist, forgiveness to ourselves, and forgiveness for those whom we love. I hope you enjoy this unit as you read through the Scriptures and answer the questions, make your posts, and discover more about your own family background by doing the genogram. God's blessings.